So what are you supposed to do with your life? What were you designed for? We approach this question with so much fear. God, what do you want me to do? As if he doesn't have something for you to do, or that you won't hear him. God, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? And we so much fear. I want to release you from that fear tonight. I want to release you from that fear so you might be able to go forward and start approaching that question with faith instead of fear. Okay, God, what do you want me to do today? What do you want me to do today? And you're waiting, like, oh, that? Okay, then I'll do that. Does that make sense? Everybody, we said this last week, and we're just going to do a little recap. Everybody ends up somewhere, and some people end up there on purpose because they had they followed the plan that God had for them. Other people get where they're going by omission. Another thing we said is that the two most important days of your life are the day that you're born and the day that you figure out why. Ephesians 2:10, I would hope that you would just take this verse, even though it's not from Nehemiah, but this is almost like the theme verse for what we're going to be talking about. I want you to plant this verse down in your soul. I want you to memorize this verse and get it down in you. You need to know this one. It's Ephesians 2:10. It says, for we are God's handiwork. We are his masterpiece. He has been shaping us from the beginning of time that we were born. We are his handiwork, created how in Jesus Christ to do what? To do good things, to do good works. He has put you on the face of the earth to do something awesome. You know, he created in the beginning, and then he breathed into us, and we turn around and start creating and building and having families and making families and tending the garden. It's like we're a chip off the old block. Like God wants to create cool things through you. And it says this, comma, which God prepared in advance for us to do. So God's already set it out for you to do, and now it's just up to you to go ahead and step into it and do it. He's already made it available and possible and empowered it, and all you got to do is put it on. That's what Ephesians 2:10 says. Andy Stanley says, though, that vision is this tension between what is and what could be. So and that's the whole reason you're there. If there was no Joker, there would be no need for the Batman, right? If there's no bad guy, if there's no problem, then there's no reason for the super suit, right? And so God created something, a vision of what could be, and then you've got where you are, and that you stand in the middle between the two, and you bring the two together, and that's the purpose of why you're still here on this earth. And didn't just go to heaven when you got saved, because there's a reason for you to still be here to do good works. So vision is the tension between what is and what could be. We started following the book of Nehemiah, and his good work was to rebuild this wall around Jerusalem. We talked about the reason why last week. And so our motif is going to be, in following this story, is this, and I want you to memorize this little phrase that I'm going to say, God-Ordained Vision. Someone say it with me, God-Ordained Vision. God has given you a God-ordained vision to each one of you. We are all one piece of this puzzle that come together and make this huge, amazing picture that God has created. So in our motif in this story of building this God-ordained vision is going to be as if Nehemiah is laying block by block to build this wall. So last week we talked about vision starts with a concern about something that's not right. The walls were broken down. That's not right. And so block 2 is a vision does not necessarily require immediate action. So he holds back and he does 2 very important things after that. As the vision is maturing in him and he's maturing for the vision, he prays and he plans. He prays by repenting of the sins of himself, his nation, his family, and all that kind of stuff. He also prays for opportunities to meet with the king and to put this opportunity before him. He prays for that opportunity. He also prays for favor, that the king will have a soft heart, that whenever he does his elevator speech to the king says, okay, and that's exactly what happens. So that's the first 4 blocks. So here's the thing. It would seem that the vision that God placed on Nehemiah's heart, and I would dare say your heart as well, was impossible. There's no freaking way this is going to work. And we talked about this last week as well. The reason it's not going to work is because he's going to have to convince the king to let him as a prisoner go free for 12 years to rebuild a wall that in the past years was a military threat. He was going to have to pay for it. And he's going to have to write letters to the governors to let him pass through these enemy territories. And he's going to have to also provide him an armed escort to get there. He's going to have to write a letter to the king of the forest to get lumber for it. The king's going to have to do all this, And he's going to also have to give him the title of governor when he gets there. But that's not all. Someone say, there's more. there's other challenges awaiting him when he gets to Jerusalem. So that's just getting out of Persia and into Jerusalem to just begin. But even before we begin, we got two more huge things that we're going to have to overcome. He's going to have to, once he gets there, he's going to have to go to a place he's never been, Jerusalem, his homeland, and he's going to have to gain the influence of all the Israelites there, and he's going to have to get them to follow him, a guy that's an outsider, but that's kind of on the inside. He's going to have to get them to take time away from their fields and their homes and their farms and all that kind of stuff to come work full-time on a wall for free over the course of 50-some days. Now, 50 days is really fast, by the way, but they don't know how long this wall is going to take. He's going to have to get these people to come do this for free, just to donate their time and all this stuff to build this wall. Not to mention, they've got all these surrounding nations that are kind of underneath Persia, but are still kind of nations that hate the Jews so much and they surround them. And so by building this wall, they're going to be bringing on the threats and all the problems of all these other nations around them. This is a huge thing. This is impossible. If you went to a businessman, if you went to Shark Tank and was like, hey, here's what I want to do. I want to build a wall and I need all these things. Who wants to invest? All of them be like, no, I'm not investing in this. But God. Someone say, but God. I love but God. But God is my favorite phrase in the whole Bible. All of this is impossible, but God. You got it. Anyway, so that's the stuff that excites me. I love this kind of stuff. People are like, Mikey, you're so negative. I'm like, I'm not negative. Look at all this darkness. And everyone's like, that's too dark. I'm like, exactly. And this darkness is what God's going to overcome. That the greater this trial, the more that God's going to have to do, the bigger the miracle it's going to have to be. When you put yourself in a place where God has to show up or nothing's going to happen, you're going to fall flat on your face. If he doesn't show up, you are putting yourself in a place where a miracle is about to break through. And that's the only time miracles do break through. You provide the sacrifice. He provides the fire. And then you see a miracle. Hear me, just about every God-ordained vision appears to be impossible. Nehemiah lets this vision mature in him, and he matures for the vision, like I said. But remember what we said, when you're waiting, God is working. Even when you don't see it, he's working. Even when you don't feel it, he's working. When you are waiting, God is working, and he's growing something in you. He's maturing that vision inside of you to be ready so that whenever you go to stand in front of those people that are going to have to join this cause, you're ready. You're not ready on day one, by the way. We talked about that last week, that, a surgeon is, you feel called into surgery and you're a freshman. You're not going to go do surgery tomorrow. You got to let that vision mature in you. You've got to gain what it's going to take to become all that you're going to become. So he's going to have to motivate others to join this God-ordained dream. How? How in the world is he going to motivate everyone to join? I'm so glad we serve the God of how. We serve the God of how. Listen, what always precedes how. Okay, so what am I called to do? Rebuild the wall. That's your what, right? Whatever yours is, it's different for each one of us. The what is rebuild the wall. How? That's up to God. I don't know if you heard me. I said the how is up to God. That's okay. We'll get it. But here's the problem. So many dreams die in the land between what and how. What's the first thing? God calls you to do something, and you're like, but how? And then sometimes the dream dies there. Or you go and you tell your best friend, they go, you? And the dream dies there. Or you go and tell your mom, I'm thinking about the Wesley Academy. I'm thinking about this or that. And really, you? And the candle. I don't know if you've ever made fire, but in the first stages of fire, it is so fragile. You've got to have the perfect combination of heat and spark, or the spark is the heat. You've got to have fuel, which is like your wood, and then you've got to have oxygen. And if you don't have those three just perfect, that thing snuffs out every time. It either you smother it with too much fuel, or you blow on it too much, it goes out, or it's just really hard to start a fire. And a vision is just like fire. It is very, very fragile, especially starting out. Once you get that vision roaring and that thing is hot and you've got all those embers that are just flickering, and I love watching fire and watching the embers just kind of flickering and stuff like that late at night. You could throw anything on it and it would catch. And that's when a vision is fully taken form. When it's fully taken form, you can throw anything on it. But in that first moment, it's very, very fragile. So dreams die in the land between what and how. And that's why it's vital that you remember this next brick in our wall. The next brick, block 5. What God originates, he orchestrates. What God originates, he orchestrates. Originates is that thing, remember block 1, that concern, we need to rebuild the wall or whatever it is in your life. That's what he originated. He planted that seed in your heart. And if he originated it, he's going to orchestrate it. That means he's going to make it happen in the how. So how is God's specialty? And let's think about Mary for a second. Mary, the mother of Jesus, okay? Let's throw up this picture. This is Macy Hope Littaw. This is her at Christmas. She's having just a great day. She is 12. She's in March going to be 13, believe it or not. Which means I've almost been here 13 years because she was 4 months old when I got to the Wesley. Macy gets up before the rest of the family, and she has her quiet time. And I look on her whiteboard, and it says, notes to my super awesome self. and so she writes down what God's telling her. And she's got a prayer journal, and I've taken her through hermeneutics. I'm just seeing how far I can go with her before she just jettisons. I have her reading the classics like, The Count of Monte Cristo and, Jekyll and Hyde and just all these. I'm trying to get her in the classics, Well, anyway, she spends all this time with the Lord every morning before I'm even up. She gets Eli up, gets him, breakfast and everything like that, and then gets ready for school, and she's just on it, and she's just a source of hope. And I told her that in the car this weekend we were driving to Denver about how her middle name is on purpose, Macy Hope, because wherever she goes, she brings hope. And I could go on and on about that, but I want you to think for just a moment. Mary, the mother of Jesus, could have been her age. She was anywhere from 12 to 14 years old when God called her to carry the Son of God, the Savior of the world. And I think, Macy, no, she's too young. How? In all the movies, Mary's like 20-something, but that's not really how things went back then. And from what scholars have told us, she's between 12 to 14, so she's right in the middle of where Mary might have been. I want you to think about Mary for a second. We'll read Luke 1:34. Mary says, how is this going to be? The angel comes and says, you are the one that's going to carry the Christ. And Mary says, oh, how? Someone say with me, how? How will this be? Since I'm just a virgin, this isn't possible. God, I see the vision you want me to carry, but the Savior of the world, but that's such a long leap of how. Thank God, God's the God of how. Because the angel messenger says this in verse 37, with God, nothing is impossible. With God, nothing is impossible. And guys, I wish we could just get that down in us, because so many times God calls us to do something or gives us a what, and all of a sudden, before we even understand and unpack what the what is, we're already worried about the how, and we shut it down, and God's like, well, okay, then I'll move on to the next person. Don't worry about the how. You are not responsible for figuring out how to pull off the God vision in your life. You're not responsible for that. You're just responsible to carry out what God has told you to carry out. Jesus goes to feed the 5,000. He tells the disciples, I want you to feed them. He hands them the baskets. They aren't supposed to figure out how they're going to divide this and hand out just a little bit to each person. All they do is do what God tells them. They take the basket and they go and they start handing it out. God provides the increase. All right, I want you to think about Moses, and they're coming up to the Red Sea. God has them right up on this place, I believe, called Aqaba, and it's like this little, like almost peninsula sticking out there, and there is no way out, and there's just ridge high, mountains, and Pharaoh's army's coming here, and all God's people are here, and you got just this huge sea right here, and there's no boats, and he's not figuring out how to make boats. That was Noah's job. He's just saying, okay, God, if you don't show up, we are screwed. And God shows up with the splitting of the Red Sea, and they walk across on dry ground. I want you to think about this for a second. He wasn't having to figure out how God was doing it. In every instance, God orchestrates events in such a way that the only person that really gets credit is God. Everyone else is just stepping into what God has already laid hold of for them. Ephesians 2:10, you remember that? That God has already set these things out for you to do, and all you got to do is walk into it. All you've got to do is put it on. All Moses had to do was walk through the Red Sea. He didn't have to make it part. He didn't have to make anything happen. And these are all just ordinary people all the way through the Bible. Every puzzle piece, every character in the Bible that comes together to make this tapestry called our story of the Bible and human history that's still going on today. Every person plays one piece in that big picture. What will your breath be? What will your vapor be? So Nehemiah, let's go back to him. He's coming into town. And he's spreading, news is probably spreading all over because he's coming in with his entourage of like armed Persian soldiers. And here's this Jewish guy, but he's one of us, but we don't know who he is. And he's coming and he's looking around. And you would think that the very first thing that Nehemiah would do is to come up and say, hey guys, we're going to rebuild the wall. And everyone's like, yay! But that's not what he does. I want us to watch what this wise man does. For 3 days, he doesn't say anything. I want you to listen for by night. Someone say by night. By night. Nehemiah 2:11. So I came to Jerusalem and I was there 3 days. Then I rose in the night, I and a few men with me. I told no one what my God had put on my heart to do at Jerusalem, nor was there any animal with me except for the one I rode. And I went by night through the valley gate to the serpent well and to the refuse gate, and I viewed the walls of Jerusalem, which were broken down, and its gates, which had been burned with fire. Verse 16, skipping down. And the officials did not know where I'd gone and what I had done. I had not yet told the Jews, or the priests, or the nobles, or the officials, or others who did the work. Later on, who would do the work. Can I just tell you guys something for a second? I don't know who I'm talking to, but that God-ordained vision, somebody in here, I know what you're feeling. You've been dreaming by night. You've been yearning. You have a desire to do something that God has called you to do. And it's in the dark of night when no one else sees it. That's when visions are born. God, and I want you to hear me now, God wants you to do this vision more than you want to do it. God wants this to happen more than you want it to happen. In fact, what's more on it's not whether God's going to show up as much as it is will you show up. That's the real thing. That's the real kicker here. Okay, to do this, this is what this whole block is about. You better investigate before you initiate. Investigate before you initiate. When God first lays something on your heart to do, like I said earlier, don't just go running and blabbing and telling everybody. One, they're not going to be as excited about it as you are, and therefore, it could snuff out that candle pretty quick. Second, there's probably some fact-finding and exploration and homework you need to do before you start telling the people what you're up to, and that's exactly what he does for 3 days. He just looks at the gate, looks at the walls, looks all the way around the city, goes all the way around the town, and looks for all the things that is going to need to happen. And this is the part that God has given him to do, to be able to vision cast and be able to see what this wall is going to look like. And before he was going to be able to cast a compelling vision to his countrymen, he needed to know exactly what they were going to be up against. And so he's taken it all in. True faith looks deeply at what all can go wrong. See, the people, some of you guys have, who's got positivity as one of your top 5 strengths, right? Okay. So sometimes looking at the negative things seems like negativity, right? But actually, I think it's greater faith. The greatest faith is for somebody to be able to say, okay, here's all the things that can possibly go wrong, but God. Someone say, but God. But God. It's kind of like Batman, but it's but God, right? Because all these things that could happen, but God. But God can show up. So once you've done this, once you've investigated before you initiate, now it's time to initiate. It's time now to get other people on board because a God-ordained vision is never one person. Never one person. There might be a key leader like Nehemiah, Martin Luther King Jr., but it wasn't just Martin Luther King Jr. walking down that road. He organized and got a bunch of other people. No God-ordained vision is singular, one person. I dare anybody to try to show me somebody in human history, and it was one person who was a great vision. Even Steve Jobs had a whole army of people around him. There's no vision that's great that is one person. So you're going to have to get other people on board with this vision that have the same vision that you do. They just don't know what to do. So to do this, we come to block 7, cast a compelling vision. You're going to have to be able to cast a compelling vision. To rebuild a fortress wall around a whole city, it's going to take much more than one man. And if the vision God has given you is one that others will rally around, you're going to have to be able to paint a compelling verbal picture, one that captures the minds and the hearts and the desires that's in their hearts already. Now, I don't know if any of you are at this point yet, but I want you to write this stuff down for what's coming next, okay? Maybe you're still in the praying and planning part of your stage, which most people in college might be there. But if you will keep these notes, keep them handy, and come back and maybe rewatch this on your app later sometime, maybe in the future, and you find yourself at a different block, then it will show you the next step. So I want you to really take this into account, whether you're at this stage or not, because this is coming down the pike in the future. This next little passage is what we're going to focus the rest of the sermon on tonight. He stands up to speak. This is the first time he actually talks to his countrymen. He says, "Then I said to them, you see the distress that we are in, how Jerusalem lies waste, its gates are burned with fire. Come, let us build the wall of Jerusalem, that we may no longer be a reproach." And I told him of the hand of God, which had been good upon me, and the king's words, and how he spoke to me. All right, let's break this down. 4 components of a compelling vision. 4 things that you're going to have to do if you're going to get an army of people or a rally, a group of people that have like mind and want to be in on this with you. 4 components. 1 is the problem. 2 is the solution. 3 is why something must be done. And 4 is why something must be done now. So let's break that down. The problem. He starts with this obvious statement in 2:17. He says, you see that we are in distress, and how Jerusalem lies waste, and how its gates have been burned with fire. Starts with the problem. Like someone's coming over to your house, and said, "Man, this place needs some vacuuming." This Nehemiah comes over to your house like, "Whoa, everything's like so messy here." I guarantee you might be offended at first, but then whenever he walks out, you kind of grab the vacuum cleaner and start kind of walking around. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're right, it is kind of a mess. I hadn't really noticed, but wow, gosh, it is kind of a mess, right? You already know it, but you've gotten so used to it that you don't see it anymore. Like I said last week, these people, the rubble's been there forever, but they just didn't even see it. They just walked right past it. They weren't even seeing it anymore. Suddenly, whenever the problem is put up in front of you, you see through someone else's eyes. Imagine, I want you to think about how many things we put up with. Think about it. Just the things you put up. Imagine one thing that you're putting up with right now. Don't say it out loud, but just one thing you're putting up with right now, and you're like, fine. You're just putting up with it. It's just going on, right? It made me think of like whenever you're like, you really got to pee, like late at night, but you're really freaking tired. And you're just like, oh, it's fine. And for some reason, you think that you can just reason yourself into thinking that you can just make it till morning. You know already you can't make it till morning. You know that this is just going to get worse. But for whatever reason, you stay laying there until the pain of staying is worse than the pain of getting up and going. I'm telling you something. Most of you will never move into the next thing that God has for you until the pain of staying is greater than the pain of leaving. Or maybe it's like an abusive relationship, but you're too afraid to leave it, so you just put up with it. Over the years, the people of God got so used to living as slaves like they were back in Egypt, and then they were free, and now they're slaves again. They got so used to it that they lost sight of what could be and what should be, and nobody remembered what used to be, and so they're just putting up with it. And suddenly, there's this guy that comes into their city, and he tells them, and they see their city now through Nehemiah's eyes, like a fresh view of what all is happening here. Listen, vision casting will always include an element of waking people out of apathy. Otherwise, whatever vision you have in your heart would already be done, right? Somebody had to dream up putting on the little squishy things on the handle of your toothbrush, right? Somebody's like, this is hard. We need to put something soft on it. And everyone's like, oh, you know what? It is hard. Maybe we should put something soft on it. And then here's the little, rubbery handle grips. Somebody had to vision that, right? Every little thing that you look at, somebody had to vision every little thing. The little packaging on the MacBook that you get. It's like, wow, this is really slick and nice. Somebody had to be like, Why don't we just put it in a plastic bag and give it to them? You know, somebody had to shake them out of the apathy and be like, you know what? Let's make something awesome. And everyone's like, you know what? Maybe we should make something awesome. Somebody had that, but it's going to include waking people out of apathy. But Nehemiah, it's always been this way. There's nothing we can do about it. So my question to you tonight is, what problem will your vision potentially solve? What need will be met? What point of tension or conflict do you propose to ease? What do you want to do? A clear explanation of the problem is going to engage people's minds, going to get them thinking. So if you can clearly engage their mind on, here's the problem that we have, and clearly articulate it, their mind will start rolling. You know what? This is kind of a dump. We might need to work on this. Wow, we hadn't really thought about that. It's always been this way, but do we need to keep doing it that way? You start getting their mind rolling when you clearly articulate the problem. Second one was the solution. Everybody's in agreement. You're right. The wall's broken down. We get it. Nehemiah goes on to propose a solution. So, verse 17, continuing, he says, so come, let's rebuild the wall of Jerusalem. That's the solution. That's a pretty simple solution. The answer's obvious, but it took someone saying it to motivate everybody. Well, no, we need to rebuild it. But then Nehemiah comes and says, let's rebuild it. And everyone's like, well, I'm listening. If given the opportunity, and so here's what I'm going to ask you right now. This is really your homework. If given the opportunity, can you in one sentence articulate your what? Can you articulate your vision, what God has laid on your heart? Until you can, you're not ready to do it. I think it's Kayla, maybe some other mentors I know. They take their apprentices over to the CC, and they get in the elevator, and she's like, okay, tell me your testimony. Hits number 4, and they've got to be able to tell their testimony by the time they get to the 4th floor. And they go up and down that elevator until they can clearly articulate a reason why somebody would leave this lifestyle to come and be a Christian. What's the point? Why did you do it, and why should I do it? They got to be able to clearly articulate that in an elevator speech. So here's your homework. Whatever God has got in you, for you to do your what that you're supposed to do, the dream, the vision God has for you, you need to start working on articulating that in one sentence, and then up to a paragraph, and then up to a 2-minute, and then a 5-minute, depending on how much time they give you. If you're talking to an investor, you got to be able to put it in a one-sentence thing, and then if they want to ask more, then you can articulate more. Does that make sense? Can you communicate convincingly in one sentence exactly what you feel God has called you to do? To those of you who can, you'll get people around you. Those who can't, you'll be by yourself. And no God-ordained vision is ever done on your own. And we're going to talk about some really cool stories next week that I'm really excited about, people who did that very thing. So a clear explanation we talked about just a minute ago, it engages the mind, but the solution, a clear solution engages the imagination. Now we don't just see, there's problems here. It's like, I wonder what it would look like. I wonder what would happen to our lives if these walls, where could we be as a nation? Where could we be as a people what could happen if somebody stepped in the gap and filled up this problem and it changed the world as we know it in this one little small puzzle piece area? What could happen? It begins to engage the imagination. It invites us to imagine a future in the way that demands change in the present to get to a preferred future. In order for others to share this passion, they must be given a clear picture of how your vision is going to change the future, and they have to know where you're taking them. One time, it's got to be shared. It can't just be them. Okay, so one time, I don't know if this has happened to any of you. This happened to me twice. Once in my dorm in Jones Hall, and once in my, there you go. Yeah, I see that hand. And then once in my apartment at Canyon Crest. Nobody. Fine. It's cool. All right. I just thought there'd be a little bit of excitement there, but there's none. No, it's fine. It's fine. This guy comes to my door, and he's like kind of hyper, maybe high. I don't know. He's like, hey, man, I've got this thing, and I'm selling magazines. And if you buy them, you'll send me to, guess where? I was like, I don't know. I mean, I'm serious. It's just like that. The Cayman Islands. Oh, do you want to send me to the Cayman Islands? I'm like, not really. I was like, it's not a shared vision. What's that going to do for me? Me who has no money, get in more debt to buy magazines I don't need so that you can go to the Cayman Islands. It's not a shared vision, right? A great vision captures a shared, someone say it with me, shared. Preferred future. So many of you and I know what happens to people who don't believe, right? At the very base level as a Christian, we know what happens to those who at the end of this life, their name is not written in the Lamb's Book of Life. And on a very basic level, before we even get into like our calling and stuff like that, every Christian has a desire, a shared vision to lead our neighbors and our families and just everybody to Christ, right? Because we're just like God. If we got the Father's heart, we would that none would perish, but that all would come to repentance as well. And then that plays out in various ways as an engineer, as a doctor, as a lawyer, as a teacher, and all these other things, a minister, whatever. But at a base level, we all have a shared common vision. So I come to you and I say, man, we're reaching people for Christ. I come to this church and that church and that church. They give me money so that we can come and keep doing the things that we do here, pay the staff and keep the lights on and all that, so that we can have a shared, and they give me that money because we have a shared preferred future. What would happen if the Wesley didn't exist? How many people over the last 10 to 12 years would not know Jesus Christ if we didn't stand at 107 26th Street? That, guys, happened because people got around it and said, we'll support that. That's a shared preferred future. So the problem, pointed out clearly, solution, very clearly what we need to do, but this is my favorite part. Why something must be done. The why. Why does your vision need to come true? Why does God need to, if I'm an investor, why do I need to invest in you, Connor? What are you going to do with the money that I'm going to give you? What are you going to do? Can I trust you that you're going to do? Why something must be done? Why do we need to rebuild this wall? What's the point? We're already conquered by Persia. What's the point in having a wall? What does that even mean? Like, why do we even need that? Pointing out the problem and the solution was not enough. People of Jerusalem needed incentive. They needed motivation. Somebody say motivation. So Nehemiah followed up with his 1-2 punch with a jab to their conscience. This was his why, by the way. I want you to listen for his why. Come and let us build the wall of Jerusalem. That was the solution. This is the why. That we may no longer be a reproach. We talked about this last week. That the broken down walls was like God, the Israelites were a joke, and the people of God were a joke, and their God was a joke. Our gods are so much cooler than your God, because your God doesn't actually protect you. Look at your ruins. You are a ruined culture. You are a slave culture. You are nothing. So people look down on their God because their wall wasn't built. And I look at our today with the divorce rate and suicide rate and abuse rate and all of that kind of stuff is just as high inside the church as the other church. Our walls are broken down. We need to rebuild them so that we're not a reproach. So when people look at us, they don't say, oh, that God isn't even real. When they look at your life, they're like, wow, there's something different about that guy. There's something different about her. Man, I wish I could just hate all Christians, but that one girl, she just, something about her. Right? That we may no longer be a reproach. Reproach means a disgrace or an embarrassment. His vision had actually started. Nehemiah's vision started way back with a man named Abraham in Genesis 22:18. And this is what God told Abraham. He says, in your seed, all the nations of the earth are going to be blessed because you have obeyed my voice. God's goal from the beginning wasn't just the Jews. The Jews were just going to be the guest care team for the world to invite the whole world into a relationship with God. And this one man and woman turned into a tribe that turned into a nation that prepared a way for the Lord to come in the New Testament. This nation would take the message to the ends of the world, but that wasn't ready yet. We have to rewind back to Nehemiah. First, they needed to set the volleyball so Jesus could come spike it on death, hell, and the grave. It wasn't ready for the spike yet. This was the Old Testament. We're still setting the spike so Jesus could come and knock it right down the devil's throat. Your God dream is just one piece in this cosmic puzzle. So a clear explanation of the problem engages the mind. Yeah, we need to do something. The solution will engage the imagination. Oh, this is what it might look like when it's done. But a compelling reason will engage the heart. This is when people will want to jump on board. If you engage their heart. If you aren't passionate enough about your God-ordained vision, no one else is going to be either. If you're not willing to sacrifice for it, they're not going to be either, though we're skipping into next week. They should be able to read it in your eyes. They should hear it in your voice. They should feel your heartbeat across the table as you're telling them about why you're going to change the world, why you see a problem, a solution, and the why behind why we need to do this. They should be like, man, sign me up. I want to be a part of this. That's a part of casting a compelling vision. What should be comes as a result of discovering why behind the what of your vision. And to do that, you're going to have to put it through this two grid. And here's the problem. A lot of times you ask yourself these two questions and you say them like Downing, like what difference is that going to make? But I want you to instead ask it like this: what difference is that going to make? Try it with me. What difference is that going to make? Now I want you to try it the good way. What difference is that going to make? Just try it with me, okay? All right. So what difference is it going to make? What difference will it make if I rebuild the wall of Jerusalem? What difference will it make? Or, I wonder what difference it would make if we rebuilt the wall of Jerusalem. Doesn't that feel better? No? Okay. What difference will it make if I get out of debt? And what difference? Or I wonder what difference it would make if I got out of debt. What could I do with that money? And what would God want me to do with that? And how could I use that to funnel the kingdom of God in such a... See what I'm saying? What difference would it make if I teach my Christian values and beliefs to my children? How could that change the trajectory of a whole generation of people from 100 years from now? What difference will it make if I'm successful in starting this new business or this new ministry endeavor? What difference will it make if I graduate from college? See, this is the why. You're starting to dream about this thing. What difference will it make if I retain purity in dating? What difference will it make? What difference could it make if I walk through this thing in dating with no shame and we get married and we're able to run and not have to deal with all the carnage of the destroyed soul that we did to ourselves in dating? You have to have a compelling vision or you're going to cast off restraint. Because in the moment that temptation comes in, if your why isn't strong enough, then your why to sin instead is going to be stronger and it's going to take you down. Why should I stop looking at porn? What could happen if I stopped? What if my senses, my spirituality got to a place where my plane was up here and now I could sense and discern things so much more clearly and I wasn't drugged down by the poison of the soul and I didn't feel depressed all the time? Tell me, what could happen if I was able to break this thing? If your vision of why isn't strong enough, then when anything comes in against it, it's going to knock you down. Your why has to be strong. So why should I attempt this? The word motivation comes from the word motives. Motives leads to your motivation or being motivated to do something. What is the motive behind your vision? I want you to ask yourself, what is the motive behind my vision? Why do I want to do this? What is it from God or is it from me? And by asking yourself why repeatedly, at least 5 times, you're going to, and I'd say drill down to 10 times. Ask yourself why until you get down to the true motive of why you want to do the what that God gave you. Let's look at a scenario. Young man, why do you want to marry that girl? Because we love each other. Well, you didn't answer my question. Why do you want to marry her? Well, I want to be with her all the time and, do stuff. So your whole vision for getting married to this girl is so you can do stuff? You can do stuff without marrying her. Why should you marry her, son? Because I don't believe it's right. Someone say right. For us to live together without being married. Okay, why is that not right? Now we're moving into values. We've gone from circumstances, well, we can't sleep together because we're not married, blah, blah, blah. We've gone from that circumstance to now a value, a core belief of something that's deeper. We've drilled down to something deeper, which is values. Now, it's not right because God says it's not right. True, but why should you do what God says? Because he's God. Well, you didn't answer my question. I want to do what God says. Why? I believe God knows what's best for me. Do you really? Yeah, I do. Why would God care about what's best for you? Because he loves me? Does he? Yeah, he does. He loves me. Yes, I know that. I know that's true. So what have we learned? Well, I guess I'm marrying her because I believe God, who loves me, has the best plan for me out of all plans that could be. And by following his plans, I have the best chances of having a successful, godly relationship with her. And in that, it will broadcast the goodness of God when people look at us. Do you see how we drilled down to a deeper value of why you should get married? Not just so I can sleep with the girl. Because what happens when you sleep with her? Is your marriage over? There's got to be a deeper why. Why are you marrying this girl of all girls? Why this one? Because she's hot. Well, great. When she's 90, she won't be. So why are you marrying this girl? Why? And keep asking yourself why until you get down to your values and you understand exactly, you can discern then between whether it's a good idea or a God idea at that point. Listen, Carrie and I want to love each other and our kids in such a way that the people around us glorify God because of our family. We want to be like, if everything else goes to hell in a handbasket and everyone's like, there's no real Christians, I want them to be able to look at Carrie and me and the way we love each other and the way we love our kids and the way we carry ourselves, that people say, you know what, but how about the lid toss? You know what I'm saying? I don't want to be broken down walls that people say, well, there's no God because I don't see God in Christians. In fact, Gandhi said, I would have become a Christian save for the Christians. I like Jesus, but man, Christians do not reflect him, so I became a Hindu instead. Our goal, me and Carrie's, is that if they don't know God, if people around us don't know God, or if they feel empty, that when they look at us, they see a hope of a better life by just doing what we do and following God. I could ask all these questions. Why preach, Mikey? Because the world is broken. It is so messed up, and college students are coming through, and they are just going off the rails into all kinds, the party scene and all these different things. Their lives are being destroyed out there by the lies of the devils, promising all these things that are not going to give them happiness, that are not going to give them fulfillment. So we need to preach the gospel, build the walls. All right, why? Because I'll tell you why. I can tell you story after story after story after story after story of why. And those people have gone out to change youth groups and families and places all around. I've known people who got saved here. They went back and they began to save their whole family. And now their whole family are believers because they came here. That's one reason why. I can tell you another reason why, because the whole world is coming to our doorsteps with international students that will go back home with the gospel in hand and lead their families to Christ. We can change the whole world. I hope you heard my heartbeat across the table there. Why join Lead? Why join Grow? Lead because, man, I'm not just supposed to receive everything. I need to give out what I've been given into. If I just have everything poured in and I never pour out, then I'm going to rot on the inside. I need to give what I've been given. Why grow? Why get mentored? Why submit yourself to a mentor? Why allow someone to speak into your life and to pull the gold out of you? Because I don't see it on my own, and I need somebody from the outside to look in and help me see what I don't see. And like a coach, any good coach. Did you know that even Tiger Woods had a coach? Tiger Woods, the best golfer at one time, had a coach. The best Olympic swimmer, Phelps, he had a coach who probably couldn't even swim as good as him, but he needed a coach to help him see what he couldn't see. That's why grow. That's why we do everything we do, we have a vision behind it. By asking why repeatedly, either you're going to realize that your vision is in fact your own and not God's, or you're going to hit on a deep value that is shared not only by you, but also with God. Once you've made the connection between your vision and God's charge on your life as a believer, your vision will transcend circumstances. You won't be just launching a company. You're going to be financing the Great Commission. I think about Beat and Bow. Beat and Bow, the people who donated to help us get our stage that we use for Worship on the Lawn. This group builds homes, but they're really just financing the Great Commission because they give away I don't know how much they give away. They said the reason they started building houses is so they could give more money to missions. Like, that's the whole reason they did it. So they start building more houses, and they give more to missions. And they build even bigger houses. They give more to the Wesley in different places all over at big chunks of grants at a time so that we can go out and preach the gospel. You're not just starting a business so that you can make more money. You're financing the Great Commission. You won't just be raising children. You'll be influencing the next generation. You won't just be holding your marriage together by threads. You'll be reestablishing God's order in society. If you ask why enough, you drill down, you can get to the core value of why God wants you to get married, why you have a desire to be married, why you have a desire to start a business, why you have a desire to be an engineering major, why you have a desire to go to the veterinary clinic and to start a whole veterinary clinic. Why? Why do that? Why help horses? Why help dogs? Because they're cute? No, that's not a good enough reason. You need to drill down until you get to the God-ordained vision of why you have your major and see where God is guiding you and leading you down this river called your life. All divinely inspired visions are in some way tied to God's greater master plan. That's why you need to fulfill your God-ordained vision. That's why you need to get to the end of that. And not just to make more money, but to do something of consequence. The fourth thing, remember, the fourth component of the compelling vision is why you need to do it now. These walls have been broken down for 100 years. Why do we need to do it now? Why not later? Now we finish with this. The end of verse 18. And I told them of the hand of my God which had been upon me, and of the king's words that he had spoken to me. I'm just going to end it there for now. Nehemiah added to the issue of timing right up front, and he says this. And as he began to tell them of how God is, guess what, guys? This is how I know this is the time for us to rebuild, because the king let me go for so many, and he gave me a passage, and he gave me the title of governor, and he's paying for this whole thing, and God is with us. That's how I know it's now. That it hadn't happened in 100 years, in the last 100 years, but now it is, so now's the time to do it, and we got a window of opportunity. And if you don't know the reason why we need to do whatever it is you need to do now, then your vision's not ready. They were spellbound to hear how the king had gotten behind this vision and how this window of opportunity was opening. And it wasn't his vision, hear me, it's not his vision that moved them into action, but how God had been acting already on their behalf, and they could see it now. It was the first time in 100 years that they had sensed God working on their behalf. Don't miss this. Nehemiah didn't point to the broken down walls as the evidence that now is the time to build. Instead, he focused on God's intervention on behalf of the people. It was the fact that God had prepared the way that made the timing perfect. So before you can cast your God-ordained vision, I want you to write that down, by the way, God-ordained vision. What is my God-ordained vision? Leave the how out. You don't need to worry about the how. You need to know the what, and you sure as heck need to know the why. The how, that's what you're going to leave up in God's hands. And you're going to pray, and you're going to plan, and you're going to investigate before you initiate, and you're going to then you're going to have to be able to say a compelling elevator speech when it comes time to interview with somebody or something. Along the way, you're going to have to be able to articulate your plan. Worship team, come. This is the result. This sounds so easy, by the way, verse 18. So they said, hey, let's rise up and build. Remember, they're going to have to leave their fields for who knows how long. Remember, they're going to have to leave the harvest at home and go all the way in and stay in the town for who knows how long. And their families are out there surrounded by the enemy, by the way. This sounds almost too easy. He says, yeah, let's rise up and build. Then they set their hands to this good work. Guys, tonight, come here excited because I want to release you. I want to release you from the fear of your God-ordained vision. It should be terrifying. It's bigger than you. You're standing at the edge of the Red Sea, and Pharaoh's behind you, which the debt collectors and maybe student loan, and you got this impossible, why'd you have to bring that up, Mikey? Red Sea sounds so much better right now than debt collectors. Got Pharaoh behind you, a sea in front of you, people saying, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And Moses, you have to hold your crap together as your God-ordained vision plays itself out. Right now, you're in the middle or maybe the beginning of your story. You got 30, 40, 50 years of doing in front of you. We all have a certain amount of time. We don't know how much time we have. What do you want your vapor to say? Our life is a vapor. It's here today. It's gone tomorrow. You never know when that vapor is going to be taken away. You never know the last time you're going to say goodbye to so-and-so and so-and-so. So you better live your vapor now. And if you can't do everything you need to do, then right now, you need to be praying and planning. And you need to be preparing your heart to hold whatever weight it is over there. If God's got 1,000 pounds for you to hold over there, I'm not just going to wait around and then he's going to throw 1,000 pounds and crush me. He's going to be like, you're not ready. But if I'm over here and I'm working out and I'm preparing myself in my spirit, or actually, if I'm actually going to lift 1,000 pounds, I'm actually doing squats and stuff like that. Then by the time I'm ready, then God's going to give me what I can handle. So you got to prepare over here. But if your vision of what could be is not strong, the why, then why give up all the comforts of here to go there? Why get out of bed to pee at night? I want you to be so miserable that you can't lay there anymore. That you got to get up and take care of business.